if you can get yourself into that automatic state of when you go from A to B, you're there. It's automatic process. You're feeling good. You don't have time to self-doubt or talk yourself out of it because you're in a state of flow. Like, it just doesn't happen. So that's
top tip to improve focus in training and competition.
Expand a little bit. So what do you mean?
What helps Curtis get focused? When you say you've been distracted for, let's say you've got a lot on with work and study, and you go to the gym, like what helps you flick that switch? What have you got? Any tips?
Like we had a pre-lifting ritual, have a pre-session ritual. So I would always start this with some form of meditation. Leaves on a Stream is my favorite. If you look that up, Dr. Russ Harris. Start that so it kind of relaxes you and lets you almost let go of all your stresses, all the things you've been doing. And then from that point, have something that gets you ready for the gym, something you associate with big lifts, be it music, videos, watching my Instagram and seeing how strong I am, whatever it is that can get you in the mood to training that you associate with good training sessions. Do that on your way to the gym or just as you get into the gym. And then, yeah, that should prep you quite nicely.
Top tip to develop composure before competition.
Before competition is in the sense of night before, the morning of, or between events?
All three.
Ratio breathing is something, especially between events. So what I would, especially a comp like OSG as well, where it's over a course of some days, if you can do some guided ratio breathing, so that's 4 seconds in, 1 second hold, 7 seconds out. Focus on the numbers as well. So you visualize the number 1, the number 2. Keeps you basically numbers you don't associate with anything. You think of the number 2, you don't feel emotionally charged, or vice versa. So you do that in a sense to stop yourself from getting over aroused, overexcited, overhyped, where you end up just burning yourself out by event 3. So I would do between events some guided ratio breathing.
Brilliant. Top tip to developing self-belief. I know we've covered this, haven't we? But a short recap or a short summary, really short summary with the main points.
The most important thing is associating positive emotions towards the output. So in this case, it's lifting heavy things. So whether it's watching back your videos where things went well and you can relive that moment. And obviously we spoke before about competitions and events you have in the competition, but in general, like say you're going for a max lift at a competition, so you got a max deadlift, go back to previous max deadlifts, relive it, relive the emotions that you felt when you were there, how good you felt before, how hyped you felt, how a little bit nervous you felt, your legs were shaking, your heart was going. And then when you start pulling it and it moves well, just remember them feelings and just allow yourself to relive it and remind yourself you're a fucking animal every now and again. A bit of motivational self-talk, internally or extertly, or covertly, sorry, can make a world of difference. Like if you just keep telling yourself you're a fucking freak or whatever you tell yourself, you will start to believe it.
But what if you find out you're not?
There's no room for that if you're a fucking animal. It's just minor learning opportunities.
Top tip to fix overthinking and stay away from mental fatigue that comes with overthinking.
Right, so I would fix that with cognitive restructuring. So people who tend to overanalyze, overthink, they tend to think of worse potential outcomes. So get them to challenge their effectively false beliefs. And sometimes as well.
How?
Right, so be an avatar for me. So think of a random example where, say you've just done a lift or whatever, you come to me, pretend you're a client and you're overthinking.
So somebody's asked me this actually. If he knows that he's going for a PB attempt on whatever date, he'll probably be thinking about it for about a week before. It's not caused a failure yet, but feels like it could do from mental fatigue in the future.
Right. Okay. So that's slightly different to what I thought you were asking. So for that, I would, because in the build up to a competition, especially if you're in the deload phase, you're going to be fucking thinking about it. You can't change that. So what I would get to do instead is I would get them to do visualization work based on the competition, make it really specific. Like I said, I think in my video, you want to be doing it from first person in real time. You want to think of all your senses, not just your eyes. So how does it feel on your hamstrings? What can you taste? What can you smell? What can you hear? If you encourage them to do some visualization work rather than just thinking of what could go wrong, what could get them to live in the situation, feel themselves lifting it, that feeling how it feels once you've locked it out, and then from there just keep getting them to go over that. So instead of them thinking of all the adverse possibilities from what could happen on competition day, instead you're getting them to live the moment, and when they get to competition day, they've effectively done the deadlift like 1,000 times. It'll increase their potential to get into said flow state, come to lift again. Then negative self-thoughts should hopefully have been shut away because they've just effectively done it 1,000 times or whatever.
Brilliant. And then finally, so top tip to keep away from over-arousal and maintain composure. So we talked about getting aroused and how that can benefit us in competition and for lifts. How do we stay away from over-arousal?
Do you mean so
we'll use your 400 kilo fail, for example. Like, do you think you were maybe over-aroused for that caused you the mistake in the strapping up? Like, if you were a couple of % less aroused, do you think you may have been more likely to avoid that happening? Maybe not in that scenario, but you see people.
I understand what you're asking.
You see people getting too hyped at comps and it having you've just missed your positions because you've been erratic, kind of thing.
Most of the time that'll come from experience with knowing what their limits are, but most of the time from experience, because again, literature for actual lifters is quite, again, limited for this. So from experience, I'd say that it's the way that the arousal is charged, in a sense that most people tend to get over aroused when they're either trying to make up for a bad previous event. So for example, if they had max deadlift, but the event before there was yoke and they fucked the yoke up and they're like, ah, shit, I need to make up points. So that, I think, if it's an element of that, then you need to, before competitions, be prepared for the fact things might go wrong, and that the most important thing is to just do what you do. And again, I know I've banged on about pre-lifting rituals, but every single heavy deadlift, you should be doing the same thing. So my height, I think it was a 370 double before that 400. Well, I know full well it was because it's my best ever lift. But how hyped I got for that 370 was the exact same as that 400. And I wouldn't say it comes, so effectively you're trying to just do what you've been doing in training. Don't try and add any extra. Just do what you're used to. And yeah, in short, it's because it's two vice versa things there, maintaining composure and getting yourself aroused. So it's just an experience point. Don't try and push yourself to an extra bit more. And if you've got that pre-lifting ritual as well, so if it is a case of you're getting over-aroused because of the state of the competition, what happened previously, how everyone else is doing, if you've got that pre-lifting ritual anyway, again, then external factors get diminished. So I know I banged on about it a lot, but I'm a big believer that everyone needs to be doing it. So mostly pre-lifting rituals and pre-lifting rituals and not trying anything new on competition day or day of whatever it is.
And again, a common theme from today, like building self-awareness and actually assessing what you're actually good at. Because I find that, like, the lower the skill level on a lift, the higher that you can afford to be aroused. Would you agree or disagree with
Sorry,
that?
did you say the lower the skill, the more you can afford to be aroused?
Yeah.
The lower the skill, as in the skill of the athlete or the skill of the lift?
Well, the combination.
I would
The skill of the athlete multiplied by the skill required to execute the lift properly.
In regards to skill of the athlete, I would 100% disagree. So if you're deadlifting, deadlift's a really easy example. So you've just begun deadlifting. You've only ever deadlifted like twice in your time. How effective is getting aroused for that aroused for that lift? How effective is that going to be for you?
Not sure.
Well, it's going to be shit because you don't know how to deadlift. You don't know effectively what you're doing. You're still trying to think of all your cues.
You don't know where to channel it yet.
So the more skilled the lifter, the more benefit and the more they can afford to get aroused. With skill of the lift, I would say I agree.
Sorry, you misinterpreted the question, I think, or I've asked it wrong. But basically, I'm referring to, say, for instance, me or you doing a comp, and like doing a 5-event comp, and the deadlift, for instance, for you, you're just thinking about attacking that, aren't you? Really. Whereas if there was like a bag throw that was a bit more skill based, that getting hyped at that, because there's more skill. Getting hyped for that can go on. You disagree with that?
No, I would agree. I would agree with that for the most part. I think I would say that for something like a bag throw, or I'm now trying to think of other examples,
or even like some of the overhead lift or whatever. That, say, for instance, if you do log with a push press or a jerk or something like, or a dumbbell or something like that, where just getting hyped can just make you miss a certain position, or stones, like addressing the stone with your hand slightly too far forward or too far back or uneven.
For some of them, it would be dependent on how automatic the skill acquisition is, i.e., if every time you do a stone, regardless of anything, you're executing it the same way, getting aroused fine. For something like a clean and jerk, I would personally say, and the one study that I mentioned earlier about psych-up strategies and lifting effectively, this was the one study that was done on proper athletes, and it was in 1978 by Shelton and Mahoney. They did it on Olympic weightlifters, and they found that the most effective psych-up strategy for them was attention focus, which makes more sense because of the technical aspects of the lift. So now I understand what you're saying. Yeah,